They're attempting to outlaw anybody on the local or state level to be able to regulate the AI industry at all. Why are they doing that? Because they want to prevent working people from standing up for themselves and governing on the grassroots level.
Are you on? Which side are you on?
We have on the line now Maurice Mitchell, the National Director of the Working Families Party. Maurice Mitchell, welcome to the Valley Labor Report. It's great to have you.
It's good to be with you.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I think that I know who was calling in, and they had mentioned in the chat actually that the Working Families Party in California, which is where he was from, is having some event here over the next week or so. So, definitely there's Working Families Party stuff going on all over the country, from New York to California. So, can you talk to folks in our audience about the Working Families Party generally? Like, what is it? What is its mission? What is the theory of change? Stuff like that.
Absolutely. So the Working Families Party is a grassroots, bottom-up, third-party movement that started 26 years ago. And it started as a coalition of labor and community coming together at a time when the Democratic Party had really taken a shift towards Wall Street, a significant shift towards Wall Street. And if people want to go back in a time machine and think about what's happening then, it's the Clinton era, right? Bill Clinton is the president. He's somebody who supported NAFTA. They also passed, quote unquote, welfare reform, which made it a lot harder for working people who needed those services to access those services. They passed the '94 crime bill, which in retrospect has really led to this massive sort of wave of incarceration and hyper-incarceration and over-policing in a lot of our communities. So this was a Democratic Party that, at the time, folks in labor unions and grassroots organizations felt was basically cribbing a lot of the ideas of the Republicans and a lot of the economic ideas of the Republicans, that felt we need to build our own political party. And in a proper democracy, the interest of everyday workers and the interest of labor unions should be represented in politics without having to negotiate with the bosses in one political party. So that's what the Working Families Party is. We started in New York, and we started with some community organizations, so ACORN at the time, and Citizen Action of New York, and some labor institutions, so CWA District 1 and UAW Region 9. Those were the four institutions that began the Working Families Party. Now, fast forward to 2025, the Working Families Party, we have chapters, like charter chapters, in more than a dozen states. You just mentioned California, and I just talked about New York, but many, many other states. We have organizing committees, which are building chapters in other states. And, there's a lot of interest for the Working Families Party, especially after November's election, where a lot of us joined in a united front with a lot of other forces, not just labor unions and grassroots organizations, but a lot of the wealthy people who are inside the Democratic Party in order to get VP Harris elected. And we basically aligned with the strategy that was being laid out, and it didn't work out. So people are looking for a new strategy. People are looking for grassroots leadership and looking for political institutions that are independent, where there might be a lot of different ideas, a lot of different opinions, but you don't have to share a political party with the actual bosses and with the billionaires. And so we recruit candidates, especially on the hyper-local level. We endorse close to 1,000 candidates every election cycle. We recruit people like labor organizers. We recruit people like educators, like homemakers, people who don't come from the networks, the money networks that generally allow people to run for office. We recruit everyday people because we believe, and it's a crazy idea, that in a democracy, the people should really govern, not corporations, not billionaires, not billionaire, dark money projects or, entities like the Heritage Foundation. And we've been running and winning throughout all those years, and we've been securing concrete victories for working people. The last thing I'll say is, we're not just trying to get people elected. We really believe in governing, right? Once you get elected, we want to make sure that you are now standing up for and accountable to working people and delivering for them. So we work really hard to get people into state legislatures, to get people into city councils, to get people in position where they could pass legislation that challenges the interest of these Uber corporations and sticks up for working people. I'll give one example just to bring that home. So right now, most places in the country, we're facing an affordability crisis. We're facing a crisis of just trying to stay in our homes, right? Rents are increasing way past where most people could afford, and the price of housing is increasing. One of the reasons for that is that rents are being artificially increased using algorithms and AI. So in a city like Philadelphia, where we have independent working families, city council people, and they are part of a coalition of labor unions and grassroots organizations and activists, we were able to pass groundbreaking legislation that outlawed the algorithmic sort of increasing of rent by not by any human, but by these AI machines artificially increasing rent to only benefit the corporations. That's outlawed in Philadelphia. It's one of the reasons why in that big bill that they passed in Congress, they're attempting to outlaw anybody on the local or state level to be able to regulate the AI industry at all. Why are they doing that? Because they want to prevent working people from standing up for themselves and governing on the grassroots level. So that's what we're about. And that's like a concrete example of what we can deliver. And that's not just one independent city council person. That's them representing a coalition of labor, community, and activists.
Hey, 5 seconds, just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
A really quick sort of trivia type question. You know, you mentioned the Working Families Party was founded by a coalition of unions and community organizations. And it was founded in 1998, and that, you know, as something of a student of labor history, that made me think of the Labor Party USA, which was founded in 1996 by, particularly labor unions. Was there ever an official affiliation between the Labor Party USA from 1996 and the Working Families Party in 1998?
So I don't know the official relationship, but I do know that many of the people involved in there's overlaps in people involved in both of those efforts, and the people who decided to build the Working Families Party in New York, they were working on something called the New Party, and the basis of that was a election law called Fusion, which used to be the law of the land, and it allowed for independent parties to be able to cross-endorse the candidates of others. And so it basically allowed for more of a multi-party democracy in this country. That actually the Republican Party came out of a fusion effort. A lot of American history, American political history included fusion parties. Eventually, the two-party duopoly made it a lot harder and tried to outlaw fusion in a number of states. And the people who were building the new party in the 90s, which included labor and community folks, they believed that fusion should be the law of the land in every state, and there was a lot of legal backing for that. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court voted against that and said that no, fusion cannot be the law in every state, but it can be law in the states where it's permitted. And that was, at the time, New York, which is why all those folks who were working on that project nationally focused on New York. And since then, fusion has been legalized in Connecticut, and a form of fusion is legal in Oregon. And there's currently some lawsuits. There's a lawsuit in New Jersey and in Kansas trying to prove that fusion should be legal in those states. So there's an effort to expand fusion, which is gaining a lot of energy now because people are recognizing what a barrier to democracy and a barrier to delivering for working people the two-party duopoly really is, and how enshrined in election law the two-party duopoly is. It's not just the reason that we have a rigid two-party system isn't just because people haven't tried to build a third party. It's because of all the structural barriers. And so there's people at the Working Families Party and elsewhere that are trying to dismantle those structural barriers so that more third party expression could actually happen in a way where we can win. So, like Ross Perot, like to go back in history, he ran a third party effort and during the 90s, and he had a lot of money, right? He was a billionaire. He could self-fund. He got to 19%. So that lets us know for us, if we want to be serious about third party politics, it's not going to be through having a charismatic character run for president and think that somehow we could just be able to avoid the spoiler dilemma that they've set up for us. We're going to have to do it county by county, state by state, because there's no guarantees or there's no shortcuts, especially when there's so many interests that are trying to prevent you from doing the thing that you're doing.
Right, right. And just for folks who may not be familiar, to dwell on the fusion voting, the thing that's really kind of unique about it is that it allows third parties like the Working Families Party to endorse, to have on their ballot line like the same people as another party. And so people can try to court the nominations of multiple parties in states where fusion voting is legal. So like AOC in New York runs on the Democratic Party ballot line and the Working Families Party ballot line. And so being able to have that ballot line in addition to the Democratic ballot line, there are going to be people who are loyal to the Working Families ballot line. And so that might, encourage Democrats to try to push some of their, positions towards the Working Families Party, or, make sure that they're not, that they don't lose that ballot line, because a certain number of their votes are typically going to come from, the Working Families Party constituency. And so that's helpful in, being able to build the power of the party as an institution, and make, convenient or, like alliances of convenience, election by election and, ballot line by ballot line, rather than always having to have a distinct candidate to be able to maintain, having the ballot line. Right. So,
that is correct.
And it's not legal in Alabama, and it's definitely very frustrating.
It's a great tool for us to build power, because if you have to, as an independent party, be able to contest every single election with your own distinct candidate.
Right.
I mean, that's why the political system is designed that way. It's like overwhelming. How do you do that? But through fusion, you could build your base over time, and hundreds of thousands of people vote on the New York Working Families Party ballot line every election cycle. And I guarantee you, when it comes time to govern, our voters don't get lost in the sauce. We know exactly how many voters voted for a particular candidate in a particular geography or a particular district. And oftentimes we're the difference maker, right? And nobody disputes the fact that there are voters that otherwise would not vote for that candidate that vote on the Working Families Party line for that candidate. And it really does help shift them towards our interests. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. And so, most people, including myself, if they know of the Working Families Party, they know about it because of New York, maybe some, activities in the Midwest, maybe California. But the Working Families Party does have some activities in the South. Can you talk about those and how the Working Families Party nationally is thinking about building power for the party and for working families in the region?
Sure. Well, we had a party in South Carolina when fusion was legal, but they outlawed fusion pretty recently, a few years ago. They outlaw fusion because it's effective, right?
It's almost surprising though that would happen in a state like South Carolina, because it would have to have been passed with Republican support, and I could almost see Republicans being like, well, the Working Families Party is a threat to the Democrats, not to me, so I don't give a shit, right? But I guess there was enough like duopoly partisanship, right, on the part of the Republicans, that they were willing to protect the Democrats, because maybe, if the Working Families Party is successful enough, then maybe the Libertarians are going to be successful, and that's going to eat into me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would like to be a fly in the wall in that smoke-filled room to figure out what happened there. But we're doing a lot of work, and we've been doing a lot of work for many years in the state of Georgia. And we have an organizing committee, not yet a chapter, but an organizing committee in Georgia that we're very proud of. And we've been organizing all throughout the state, of course, in the Atlanta metro area, but in a number of places. And we're continuing to do that work. We have a program called Bet on Us that is a very specific leadership development program in the Southeast region. And we've been able to recruit and train specifically Black women to run for local office. I think we're close to maybe like 300 or more than 300 women have run through that program over the past few years. We've run elections in a number of states, and we've supported allies in states like Mississippi, and Florida, and we've done a lot of work over the past few years in North Carolina and worked very closely with community partners in North Carolina. And there's more and more interest in the South. Like I just got some interest from somebody in Kentucky. We've been talking more seriously with people in Mississippi. That's an ongoing conversation. So there's a lot of interest, and we are committed to and invested long term in party building in the South. Party building and anything really in organizing. Like I like to say, there's no guarantees and there's no shortcuts. So the work that we do, um, there's no grand slam, because you ran some, amazing candidate somewhere that could lead to building a strong party base. And so we take very seriously the prospect of building up chapters state by state by state in the Southeast, but it's something that we believe is required. A lot of people say, so the South goes the country. I really believe that. I think the fight for the direction of this country will lead through whether or not we could build very strong organization of working people in the South, both the Southeast and the Southwest.
Right, right. And I think at one point this has been, I guess, gosh, I was Googling it just now, and when Woodin was first elected was in 2016 or 2017, so that's been almost 10 years ago. But I think at that time there was some presence of the Working Families Party in Alabama, and the Working Families Party, along with Our Revolution and Bernie Sanders, had endorsed Woodin and was a big part, is my recollection of the history of him getting elected over the incumbent. And that was really exciting at the time. I think that ultimately Woodin has been a little bit of a disappointment. I'm not in Birmingham. I don't know a whole lot, but it seems like folks are kind of disappointed in him. But
and I want to speak on that. So that was a little bit before my time, but I want to talk about the topic of individual candidates disappointing us, because I always try to think about organization and the structures and movement and organization that we need to build versus individuals. I think the individual behavior is a symptom, right? So if you see people that we believe in get into elected office, and then when they're in office, we feel disappointed about the decisions that we make, I always want to figure out what is the organizational solution to that, right? Not necessarily looking at that person as an individual as being somehow like a corrupt person or a flawed individual. I generally assume that there's organizational solutions and structural solutions. And I think what we've learned is that, look, like I get disappointed. I love my family. I love my brother. I get disappointed by him sometimes. He gets disappointed by me. We will be disappointed by individual politicians, even the ones we love the most. How are we creating the structures to support them, right? And hold them. And when I say hold them accountable, I don't just mean punitively, right? Because accountability is carrots and sticks. Accountability, like when I wake, like I have I try to work out. One of the things that helps me is the positive accountability of knowing that, when I have like a little accountability circle. When I do work out, when I do my morning workout, I let them know, they give me a high five, right? So what are the positive things and also perhaps the punitive things we're doing after they get elected to support them and hold them accountable so that they could govern the way we want to govern? And what we've learned over time is that there's a lot of work that you have to do after an election to ensure that the people we put in office succeed and actually deliver on our agenda. They are being sort of skyrocketed into a corrupt system. And so the system, the the system, that organization, the organization of the bosses, of capital, of the corporations, is one of the reasons why they often feel like they, quote unquote, have to make decisions that we might disagree with. And so we need to build the grassroots system so that they could feel like, quote unquote, feel like they have to align with us. And that is the organizational work that I think we think a lot about when we think about not just electing people, but governing.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.